Hello and welcome to this new video of homebuildhelp.com. We're Mark
and David
of Kanzak Aviation. We're the Canadian distributor for Zenith aircraft. And what we'll be showing you in this video is processes of how to start and how to build all the parts necessary to plan to build your airplane. We're going to work with the rudder primarily because everything that we show you within this in manufacturing the rudder will be useful throughout the whole airplane. There's very little other things in the airplane that you don't learn within the rudder.
Now, you don't have to have all the tools that you might think that you would need if you're going to scratch build an airplane, but you do have to come into it with a really healthy imagination. One of the things about scratch building is that you will run across parts that you really have no idea how to make. You don't have the big fancy $100,000 press brake. You don't have the big fancy drill press or the big machining mill, and yet you're still going to try and make some parts. And I think that if you'll sit down and let your imagination soar a little bit, you'll find that there are ways that you can come up with doing some of these things. And we'll show you on this video a couple of different ways that you can get by with a 2x4 and a hammer and some clamps. So it's a matter of using your imagination and being a little inventive and trying things out.
Now in this, we've decided not to show you our hangar. We've not gone to a professional workshop. What we've done is we've come to my personal workshop. This is my residence, and this is where I started out building many years ago. Most of the tools that I use in here, I still use today even. And as you can see, I do have a project on the go in here. It's a 601 XL from Zenith. And in this space, it's much similar to what your space is going to look like. The tools will be much the same. There's nothing high-tech in here. A lot of the tools within this workshop, and you'll see them over the period of this DVD, a lot of these tools we've manufactured ourselves, and you'll hear more about that at the end of this DVD. We do tend to have a mascot from time to time pop up and just say hello, and you may see him if you keep an eye out throughout the DVD.
That'd be a good time. Are you around, Sock Puppet?
There he is. This is our mascot.
Sock Man.
One thing we do invite you to do is we have a lot of fun doing this. This is a hobby and it's a joy. If you're not having a lot of fun doing this project, and it is a daunting task starting from scratch, from plans, then maybe consider a kit, a quick build kit, or just a lot less work on certain parts. From Zenith Aircraft itself, you can buy any individual part, the spars, if you think they're a little daunting. If you're not into welding, you don't know how to weld, and you really don't want to learn or invest in the tooling for it, then you can buy every piece that's welded within the airframe. Or you can have Sock Puppet come visit and do some welding. He's pretty good at it. Although he eats every brownie around, we found out.
Got a brownie habit? Yep.
Okay. The one thing we do recommend to new builders is to set a schedule and try to stick as close to it as possible. One day a weekend, if you can devote a whole day, and 1 or 2 nights in the evening are going to help you amazingly towards finishing your goal. But always remember, your family is most important. A day dedicated to them, involving them within the workshop, is of top priority for family harmony.
You'll also find that aircraft builders are a breed apart, and they tend to all be a family, a group. And you can pretty much contact any aircraft builder anywhere, and they'll be happy to show you what they've done because they have this pride of accomplishment that you can have too. What that means is if you've got some people building in your area, you can certainly go ask them some questions about how they would do this or how they would do that. They may know somebody who can help you with parts. They may also know something about a particular assembly that you're having a problem with. There's an online community that you can usually tap into, so search the internet, and you'll find people that are more than willing to help you out with your project.
If you do get hung up from time to time, if you do find a hard spot that you just don't quite understand, the support group is always there. Either Zenith Aircraft itself has a great technical department, and Kanzak Aviation technical support is always there for you to call upon.
Just remember, you're not alone when you're doing this building project, and having other people doing it with you makes it all the more easier and all the more enjoyable.
Although if Sock Puppet answers the phone, forget about technical support. Right, Sock Puppet?
Okay, so what we're trying to do today is we're going to make a rib and show basically how we're going to do rib forming. Now, the basics of rib forming are you could stamp this out if you had a fancy machine shop, but when you're scratch building, we generally don't do that. We generally make a set of what they call form blocks. Now, the form blocks allow you to bend this metal over the block. What we do is we create a block that's in the shape of this, and then what we're going to do is we have two of them, and we put a piece of aluminum in between those, and then we bend the ends of the aluminum around the block. So the first thing we have to do is create the block. Now, one of the things I like to do in order to be able to save money and in order to be able to make a nice form block is I'll get recycled wood. This one here is actually a maple door, and the center part of it's not very good because it's not very thick, but on the edges here you can see I have a really kind of a wide, I guess you might call it a flange or an edge on the door. It's about 90 millimeters wide, and it's about 3/4 of an inch thick, so it'll make a very nice form block. And if you're doing a piece that requires a sharp bend or a radius when you're doing the bending, that requires a bit of forming and using a hammer on it. So generally we want to use a piece of higher quality wood. If you're doing a straight bend where you don't have to have any kind of curvature, you can go ahead and use MDF or some lighter stuff. Generally you can find used plywood at the dump or any kind of recycle place, and you can work from that. So the first thing what we do when we start taking a look at our materials, we want to basically be able to put the drawing from, or take the information from the drawings and put them onto the work that you're going to work on, onto the surface. Let's take a look at the drawings now. The drawing is going to give us dimensions for how long it's going to be and how wide it's going to be. And generally, if you take a look here, this is something where they give you just a layout in terms of a chart that says if you go out so far X, for each measurement that you go out X, you go a certain amount Y. And that will allow you to plot out your picture. On this one we're making today, they do it slightly differently. They actually show the dimensions that you're going to use, and it works the same way. From a certain spot on this drawing, we go up a certain amount and down a certain amount. And that's how we're going to do that. We start by drawing, and I've already got it on here, we draw a line that's square. So you have to start with a square piece of wood. So if you don't have a square piece of wood, go ahead and make it square. We always would just check to make sure that it is. And that way when I go ahead and put my marks on here, I know that they're going to be perpendicular to the line that I have here, and I'm going to get what I was looking for in the first place. Okay, so on this one it says that we start with 6 millimeters for the form block on here. Now I've already got my center line, so I really just have to go 3 millimeters on either side of that. So I'll put that down there, and I'll put my 3 millimeters on either side of that. I'm using just a pencil to mark on the wood right now. So 3 millimeters there, and 3 millimeters there. Then I can go ahead and I can figure out down to this part I have to go 300 millimeters to the part right here where I start my curve. So I can measure out my 300 millimeters. That takes me to right here. I'm just using my square and put a line there. So now I have the narrow end, and I have basically almost the fattest part, or the part where I'm going to start measuring out my curve from. Now I know that each one of my marks here is going to be 10 millimeters from the last, because it shows 10 millimeters of distance from the last mark. So if I make 1, 2, 3, 4 lines at 10 millimeters each, I'll be able to mark that out very easily. So that's what I'm going to do now. Okay, and in each case, again, draw my square line so I know it's perpendicular. If I simply take a spot on here that's a 10 millimeter line, and I can just go up 20 and down 20. There's my first location. The next one is 20.5. And one of the reasons we work in millimeters a lot of times on airplane plans is because it's just a little bit more precise than trying to work with 1/8 of an inch or even 1/16 of an inch. So at 20.5, I'm just going to have to give it a tiny bit extra on both sides. The next one is down to 19.5, so we're starting to get a little bit narrower. The next one is 17. There's 17 there, and there. The next one after that is 13, so now it's starting to narrow out a lot. And then what I have to do is, at this location where the 13 is, I put a little spot here. Next thing I have to do is I have to get my protractor out and draw a circle. Okay, so if anyone can't remember what a protractor is, it's a machine like this, and I'm just trying to figure out which one's actually going to work best with a pencil. And we're in luck here because Mark actually has one that has a pencil built into it. And this is a fairly precision unit. The one that I have at home is a lot less expensive. And it still works pretty good. This one here allows you to have a little bit more control because it has a very, very fine thread on here. And as you do your adjustments, it'll stay right exactly where you set it. So according to the drawings here, I need to have a radius of 11 millimeters. So I simply pick a spot that's 10 millimeters on here, and if I set my point, it's very, very sharp on there. I simply can adjust this until I come back to exactly 11 millimeters. So that's an 11 millimeter radius right there. And I just go ahead and put my point right in the exact spot where it needs to be and draw my 11 millimeter radius. Boy, that's a very, very tight little circle. Okay, now at this point you should actually be able to see that there's something starting to take shape. I'm finished with that for the moment. Alright, so now we can draw our lines, and I go from this spot here that's 3 millimeters off the center, and I go up to this spot here. This is actually a straight line, and so for this I'll use a ruler. When I start to draw the curve, often I'll use like a coat hanger or something like that to help that I can bend so that it hits the points but still gives me a curve. Ah, thank you very much. This is from my friend Mr. Sock. We'll meet him a little later. This is Mr. Gumby. Yes, we use this in drafting class, and it's one of those things that you can just kind of bend so that it actually meets the points, and then you draw your curve around it. Okay, so I'm going to put my other straight line on here first, and then Mr. Gumby is going to get to work. All right, so now it's time for Mr. Gumby to come into play. Oh, sorry for the noise. Simply just keep bending it until you have a spot where it actually lines up on all the areas that you need to hit, all the little points. And then you just draw the line along that. And I have my curve. And I do the same on the other side. That's a nice Gumby. You can generally pick this up at a craft store, a drafting store, or anything that supplies those kind of parts. But like I say, you could use a coat hanger if you wanted to. It would probably work almost as well. And there we have the plot. Now, there's our drawing for our nose. Actually, this is the tip rib, the CH701, and we'll cut that out right away in rough. So we'll just cut this out rough. We'll drill some holes through it, and we'll pin it to another piece that we don't have to cut out in rough. And then we'll fine cut both pieces at the same time so they are perfectly matched to one another. And we'll cut those out probably on Mark's bandsaw. Okay. Okay, so while we're talking about form blocks here, I want to talk just a little bit about materials and what we might do with the various types. This one here is simply a fiberboard, and as I mentioned before, if you're only going to use it once, or if you're doing a simple one that doesn't have any complex bends, using a lighter material, a cheaper material, and one that'll actually disintegrate if you bang on it too many times is fine. So for those straight ones, or for ones where you're only going to make one part, you can go ahead and use a lighter material. So the fiberboard is one thing. While we're looking at it, I'd like you to just take a quick look down here. And what you can see is that this actually bends downward here. What we've done is we've actually made this more than 90 degrees here, because when we bend the aluminum over this way, it's going to have a certain tendency to want to spring back. So what we do is we slightly overbend it, and that's what this extra amount is here. And generally it'll give that information on the plans that you're working from. That'll tell you how much you should add extra to this angle on the form block in order so that the spring back will be correct for the thickness of material that you're actually forming. Another thing that you can do is you can plot stuff out on paper. This is actually a rib for a wing. And actually it's a spot that's where it's quite thin. But there's only 2 of them made, and we can plot it out on paper, and then you can simply trace around the edge of that onto the aluminum. Now alternately, for the parts blanks, you can simply plot right onto the aluminum itself. Now the marks are mostly gone from this one here, but what we wanted to do was we wanted to just, we were only going to make one set, so I didn't bother making any kind of a cutting form or anything. And I plotted it out right on here, and I don't know if you can see the lines, but there's lines on here. Then we can simply lay this down several different times on the aluminum and move it around so that we can get as many parts as possible out of the aluminum sheet we're working with, and simply trace around there and cut them out, and then that will help you form your parts blanks. Here's a couple of parts blanks that have been made from this form that was done, and these ones here are ready to be cut out, and then once they're cut out we will go ahead and put them into the form, and this is actually the form for that right here. And this one here, we do make one left and one right. Now when you make one left and one right, you will see here that it is actually, we've got this over cutting on both sides, so that the angle comes down, allows for spring back this way, or if we bend over this one, it allows for spring back this way. On this other form block, we're only making one of these, and so we didn't have to actually go ahead and put that extra angle on that side. So there's several different ways you can pin these together. As I said, we end up putting this piece of aluminum between these 2 sheets, and when we do that, we have to pin them together so that they're going to fit exactly. You can use a simple dowel. This one here is a metal dowel that was used on this one, and this one here is one that was made out of a pretty nice grade of plywood. But what you'll find often is that there happens to be little small pieces of high grade wood around that you can use for some of these things. It wasn't necessarily chosen because we're going to make hundreds of these or anything like that. It was just we had the material around. So that's that. This is a pretty good grade of plywood as well. And this one down here, this one here is one of the ones for the nose rib for the 701, and you can see that we've already got, not only is it bent over, but we've already cut in these holes where the flutes are going to go, where there's going to be fluting in there, because as you fold the material over, it's going to have extra material, and so to take the material up, you actually bend it into these areas. So we'll get into the discussion of that a little bit later on as well. Here's another material that was used. This one here is a solid countertop, and again this was gotten from a recycle place where they've taken apart houses and old bits of stuff, and then they sell it, and you can buy it pretty cheap. Corian would be one of the brand names of this material. It actually makes a pretty good form block, but you have to be a little careful. As it gets older, it gets a bit brittle. but it does make a nice solid form block. One of the things you'll see on here, if you look here, you'll see the radius. When you're bending this material over, you need to make sure that it has a bit of a radius to it, because if you bend a material too sharply, what it does is actually strains the material a little bit too much, so to the point where it won't take much working before it'll actually start to form cracks. So if you put the proper radius on this, and we tend to do this radius with a router after we've made everything else and have it set, the last thing we do is add the radius, and we'll show that when we're making our form block for this tip rib that we're doing today. So one other thing I wanted to show you, oh, and also the pins on this one here, instead of just using dowels, we've used bolts. Now the bolts are kind of good in some ways, because certainly for bigger parts you have to be able to keep these things clamped together very, very tightly. No one has a vise that's like 4 feet across, and so if you have some bolts that go through, you end up with machine holes in your part, which is not a problem, but it helps hold the form blocks together and in place while you're doing your work. So the bolts are a good solution. There's another one of those made out of that countertop material, and again bolted. This one here is actually what they call a cutting form block. And what we do is when you take your form block, your material for your parts blank is going to be bigger, because it has to have the flange. So if you take a look, this would be the edge of the form block. This would be the flange that we're going to bend over the block. So if we simply take our form block that we have and lay it on a piece of paper, we can actually add the extra amount for the flange, and then we can cut out the parts individually. If you're making a lot of one part, instead of doing it that way, you can simply make yourself a cutting block. And in this case, what we're going to do, and this is actually the cutting block for the part that we make with this form block right here. What we can do here is, if we add the flange material thickness to here and draw that out on this piece of wood, which is what we've done, that adds the flange. What we can do is we can cut, just rough cut, 3 or 4 pieces of material. You won't go too thick. And then you can put those pieces of material in here, clamp it with the form block. You can use your router, and you can cut around there, and you can cut several pieces at once. So when you're doing a lot of pieces of the same type, it's often worth your while and your time to go ahead and make yourself a cutting form. And we've done that before for nose ribs and several types of things, particularly on stuff that has curved cuts. It's hardly worth doing when you're starting to do a bunch of straight cuts, because straight cuts are very easy to make and very fast. Okay.
When you start into the plans building arena, the one thing you have to realize is it's not just bending metal. There's a lot more involved. There's extra tooling that you will need in order to construct the forms in order to make the plane, and the forms are the biggest part of the job. If you notice behind me, you'll see the whole set of forms for the 601XL Zenith airplane, the 601XL. These all are different sizes. It's a tapered wing on that model, so you have 9 different form blanks you have to make. As well, in order to be a little more accurate, we also made a complete set of cutting forms for this plane. So in that, you have a lot of work to do just in woodworking. You do need to have somewhat of a workshop to do this. A bandsaw is definitely, although not completely necessary, it is a very good asset to have on hand. You can cut all these out with a jigsaw. It's just a lot more work, but then again, you can do it with any hand tool. Once again, a lot more work involved. So on these, you will see, this is the typical, this is rib 9, which is the smallest rib in the 601. We've marked out our hole locations that we're going to do. Now, we've also made a mistake in our measurements. So one thing that I typically do, and I do suggest to most people, is when you've made your blank, have someone else go over it, and with a little measuring rule, just in case you're a little tired that day, you've made one little mistake and it's compounded along the way. I'll have my wife check it, my daughter will check it, or a friend will come over, I'll give them a coffee, and away we go. And you'll see, at one point in time I was out on this one. So we had to move them appropriately. And then we locate the screw holes dead center of where the lightning holes are going to be. And this is what's going to tighten the two together so that it holds the metal in place until I get it into the vise for hammering. You also have on this, once again, and you've seen this, is you have a tapered edge. On this one, it's about an 8-degree taper on this with the reliefs built right into it, which take up the slack of the metal. They pull the metal down in and leave you with the flat surface there for where your normal riveting would be. Also on these, and we built this into the form, is on the two edges here. Now, probably pretty hard to see on the camera. On the two edges, there's just a little bit of a suck in here. We've taken a little more material. These have to go underneath the spar caps for the main spar. So we built that right into the form, and with the hammer we've taken just a little extra down so that it will fit, and this part of the skin where this part of the rib where you're going to be riveting to the skin will be flush with this part because you have the other piece laying on top. So take that into account when you're making your forms, and you'll have a far nicer looking rib at the end. When we do the cutting form, we also include the holes in them. This is not necessary. At one point in time we were doing it, and what we do now typically is we'll use this. We've got our center holes in, and we won't do this until after everything's bent. At that point in time we'll use a fly cutter. But in this instance we were using the router. Now these forms are great for when you put the piece of metal in. They have the measured extra distance on them. And you take the router along the outside edge and it will form the piece of metal that you need to the exact size. Now there's a right and a left on these, so both sides of these are chamfered as you've seen earlier. So you do form one this way and form one the other way. Don't throw these out until you are done your plane or you've assembled this whole section, because quite often you will make a mistake and do two of the one way and have to go back and do another one again. There is a lot of forms in the plane. There's a few more small ones. Same idea. If you have a rib that you're only making one of and only has to go one way, then you only need to chamfer the bottom one, the proper amount you have to go, and you put your release in there. So you put the work into the one that is the actual form. The other one is only there to hold the piece of metal flat against the form. So when you put it in your vise, it'll be held in nice and snug. Doesn't require a lot of work on the second one. And then of course when you get into the back of your airplane and you're working on your turtle deck, you also notice once again we have the one here, which is just, it's rough. There's no real finish on it. It's not used for anything other than holding pressure against a piece of aluminum. The aluminum is sandwiched in the middle, and all the form, all the shape is taken up on the back one. So you know which way you're going to form onto this. And we do have the couple of the simple ones. When you get into things like the flaps, the ailerons of your plane, or flaperons, depending on which plane you're building, there's only a few of these you need. They're a very small piece, very easy. These ones didn't even have locating pins in them. We just basically lined the metal up along the back in the vise. Along the front, we put a couple of extra clamps on, put them in the vise, and then just went right there. So it's just a very simple form if it's a small, easily workable piece. And now we'll get into making the tip rib for the 701 rudder. Okay, so we're not here to instruct you on how to use your tools. This is something you should be well acquainted with. Read your owner's manual, understand the safety protocols of your tool. You should be aware of how they work, and the safety measure goes with them. I do always stress, wear a pair of safety glasses. In this, especially when working with aluminum, you have small chips and everything else. Safety glasses are definitely a necessity. Okay, so as we saw earlier in the video, we saw Dave has taken the time to draw this out for me. And he's done a very nice job of doing that. You saw the use of the gumby up in here to make the nice shape. Now we need to cut this out in order to make it useful for us. I've got a big door. My throat depth is not enough for me to actually go in from here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just run a straight cut, just slice through, make it more manageable size. From there, then we'll start working on the piece itself. When I do cut these, you will notice that I've left just an edge of the pencil line on. When I use the bandsaw, I cut on the outside edge of the pencil line, and I sand it back to the inside edge of there. This way we know we're close, we're not going to spend a lot of time in the sanding, and it should make life a lot easier for us. Now I've got my second piece, and before I actually even go even further with that, I'm going to secure these two together. And I'm going to come back, just trim this edge off a little bit nicer, and I'll catch the bottom one, and then I'll come up and do my whole front together. So we'll be back in a minute for that. Alright, so we've gone to the door press. We've installed our countersunk screws within here to hold the two pieces of material together. Now I can come back in with the bandsaw blade, just cut the edge here, get both to be matched. And then I'll come in and do my nose round up in here. And these won't get detached now until I'm ready to put aluminum into them. They'll stay like this throughout the whole sanding period and everything. So. Okay, so from here we've got the rough cut already done on both pieces. They're fairly close together now. We'll go to the sander. We'll do with the belt sander. We'll catch the sides, and then we'll put we'll catch the sides, get the full shape. Come back down. We'll use the router within the middle. Put our 1/8 radius within here, and then we'll head back out and do a little bit of a chamfer on there as the final sanding.
Anyways, I made a mistake in this measurement, and I had to make it wider. So I simply, rather than scrap the drawing, I simply put the extra width on there that I needed, and then redrew the line again and marked on here with the squiggly line to show that that's not the line you're supposed to cut. It should be this one here. Matter of fact, you can sometimes do that cut here. The other thing you do is you mark on there what they are. This is rib 1, rib 2, rib 3, and rib 4.
Okay, now Dave spent the time and he's done a nice little layout for us. We'll get it right into the bandsaw, get these cut out, and then we'll finish up with the other piece as well.
Another way to go ahead and mark these things is to use a CAD program and draw it out on your computer. And then you can actually print it off and you can lay them down over top of your wood. Now some people have used like glue, and they'll glue it down over top their wood. The other thing you can do if you have a good quality printer is sometimes you can turn the picture upside down and simply iron it onto the wood, and what it does is it transfers the toner with the heat onto the wood you're working on. So that's one thing you can do, but Mark will tell you something you have to be aware of.
One thing you do have to be wary of is that in using a printer, even high quality printers, the measurements may not always be exact. You do have to double check the measurements. One other thing to be cautious of is if you're using a copier, every copy will be a 1% expansion of the original. So in that, if you use the copier, use it throughout your whole plane, because you're going to be 1% bigger than the original plans for the plane.
All right, one of the other ways you can do this, rather than the Gumby, sometimes the Gumby is not very stiff, and I said you could use a coat hanger or something, but one of these flexible metal rulers will work quite nicely. We'll line the holes up, and I'll just hold this in place and get Mark to go ahead and draw the line for me when we're bang on. And it looks like we're right about perfect there, Mark, so go ahead. Okay, now we'll get this side and do the same thing. We have to use the Gumby for that last part. Okay. Okay, right about there should do the trick. That gives us a real nice smooth curve connecting all the points. We'll use the Gumby to get this last bit of curve because it's a little bit too tight to bend the ruler there. But the Gumby is not really stiff enough to get a nice gentle curve over a longer distance. Okay? Go ahead and do that there.
Beautiful. Oh, you're close. Good.
Okay, we can get around that.
And I'll come on the inside of this one.
Yep.
Good. Now it's time to cut this one out in the bandsaw. Alright, here you see three different materials that we're using actually for the forming. Because the tip rib, there's only one we need to make. We do have a very hard bend to make up into here. This is a little more work, so we do want a solid material for this form. This rib here is just a standard rib. We're only going to make one of these as well. Simple particle board is just fine. This is the fiber board. What is the composition of this stuff?
It's wood, sawdust, and glue.
It's
MDF.
It's really a nasty piece of material for a lot of your tools. The glue will heat up your tools, and it's easy enough to work with, but on the other side, it's also damaging to a lot of your stuff. Don't use a lot of this if you can avoid it. It's very prone to moisture. Moisture in it makes it whisk up, expand. It warps over a period of time. It's not a very great material. But in this, we're making one form out of it. There is a bit of a tightness up in this bend. This will handle well the type of banging we're going to be forcing against it. And it's rather soft up in here, so it should accommodate this nicely. We'll just saw this out and then follow along with the rest. Okay, now we're just into the point where we do have to start doing the side sanding on the pieces we've cut already on the bandsaw. I just want to show you a couple things first. This is one for the, I believe this is the stabilizer for the 701. On this you can see that it has the angles here. Now the 701, this particular rib that we need to make out of this form, is actually going to be done at 90 degrees, so you need to put a little bit of a relief on it, a little over, so that it has a spring back. And there's about 6 degrees on this one here. So when I do bring it over, it springs back typically about 6 degrees. And that's great for that, and it leaves a nice 90-degree rib when I'm done.
Do you want to just demonstrate how?
This one here, when we do the plans, and you'll see in a second that the plans are going to show you that there is no spring back of 90 degrees. The rib itself has to be 92 degrees open, so it's about a 2-degree open from the 90. In that, we're just going to leave this as a straight edge. We're not going to chamfer it down any with the sander. It'll be a straight edge, so that should give us our 2-degree open. And I'll get on that now.
Illustrates much addiction power to it.
Okay, what we need to do at this point in time, we've already drawn these lines out. We've done this, a lot of the work with the bandsaw. We've gotten fairly close on certain spots, but we try to leave a little bit extra to take it off the sander. We have a mild abrasive paper, probably about 60 grit. And we're going to sand back right to the inside edge of these lines. And you can see the lines here. And we still have our tick marks as well that we have to come up to. So we're going to very slowly come in and work our way to the end here and bring this nice and flat. You'll also notice that this is a random orbit sander. It's an oscillating sander. It has an up and down motion as well as the round. It's a nice woodworking tool and it's fairly decent, but its strength is in woodworking. Its strength is not within the metalwork you're going to be doing. So there are other ones. There's a belt combination, belt circular sander combination that works exceptionally well. It does this job adequately, but its use is really well, very handy within the aluminum work. And that's probably the sander you'd want. It'd be preferable. Now I still have a couple of marks here that I do want to get just a touch more out on these. We'll work on them just a touch more. As well as you want to be able to feel the smoothness of the form as you go around. And that looks good. We're really worried, not so much about out here, we're worried about this center line edge right here. This is the line that is critical for us. And really in the forming of the piece, this is the whole area right here that is critical. And that's where all the bend is going to be taking place. Be cautious on the material you're using. You're going to find that this stuff here, it being a composite of glue and everything else, sawdust, tends to really disappear when you're sanding. Makes it just a bit harder to work with. Now, I'm just off a little bit. I'm going to come back upside down. I don't have any marks on here. But what I want to do is bring that around to a nice smooth roundness. I'm going to lower my belt a bit for that. And see how fast that this sander, and this is not an overly high grip, see just how fast that takes that all off. And we're pretty good for that one. So we'll move on to our other ones, do the same process on the other ones. Because we have the 92 degree, we can keep the flat table and that'll work for the rest. Now when you get into a rib form that requires us the 90 degrees, and you need to build in the spring back. So if you can see here, this one I was only doing a one rib, so just the one side. And you can see here that there is a little bit of the chamfer on there. So what we have to do is bring the table down to about 6 to 8 degrees, depending on which thickness of material you're working with. And you can bring that in and work. Now, unfortunately, when you do have to work that way, you need to get right on top. Definitely wear good eye protection. Get right on top so that you can see what's happening. And also you'll find that you need to mark it with the pencil or a magic marker Normally before you do a chamfer job like this, you'll put in the round over in here. And what I tend to do is once the round over, and you'll see that a bit later, once the round over is in, it takes up about that much space. And you can see this one's already been marked. And what you're going to do now is you're going to use the sander, and you're going to sand the angle up to that line, which is then the beginning of the round over. And once you've come up to that line, you're in good shape. But for now, everything we need to do is going to be straight. And I'll just continue on with this and go through this. Now we come to our tip rib. This is going to require a little bit more work. This, I believe, is a cherry wood. It's a nice little wood. Now, as you saw before, we ended up with this biscuit in here, and it was a shame to see that. It's one of those little surprises you get when you work with just reclaimed wood. But there's a fortunate side to that. We don't need this side. It's not going to be used at all for forming the material. What we are going to use is this side here. This side is what's going to be our actual form for the rib. So in that, we're going to do all our work on here. Once again, it's a 92 spread out on this particular rib, so we are going to keep it at the 90 degree on the form and allow it to spring back to its 2 degrees by itself. And we'll just clean this up, and this one's going to require a little bit of indents taken out, and you're going to see that in a minute, as well as we're going to do the big reliefs in the nose piece that we did earlier. And that's looking pretty good there. One thing I will say is, and you don't see me wearing a face mask right now, I do recommend using a respirator. I do keep one by my machine. This or just a simple fiber mask will do. But with the dust that you're getting from the wood is not healthy for you. So a little protection there goes a long way. So now we come to a point where it is time to put in the 1/8 round over in between where you sandwich the aluminum. So you want that on both sides of this, and you're going to do that before you put in your release for the take up on the aluminum. So let's get into that. We'll get that going. Okay, so this is just a normal woodworking router table. You can find them at any little hobby store or your local Sears or Harbor Freight. You can get them fairly cheap. And within it, we have the router mounted underneath, but we have a 1/8 round over bit. Now this one has carbide tips. I do recommend the carbide tips over the high-speed steel. It lasts longer, it does a little nicer job. So we see these are all rounded over. The one thing about using woodworking tools is that woodworking tools have no problem as long as it can cut a hardwood, as long as it can cut a piece of hardwood, then there's no problem with it cutting aluminum as well. And you'll find that if you need to do something like a round over or any type of cut, a simple piece of woodworking tool will do the aluminum quite nicely. Now, if we had a piece of aluminum here, I could show you quickly on how it's done. Oh, and I think we just found one from Mr. Sock. Thank you, Mr. Sock.
You're welcome.
So we will put in a round over in here, and you can see there's a bit of a notch out of this one. Now, for the purpose of this video, and it's the only time you will ever find me, I have removed any of the safety features on this table. I've removed all the hand guards and everything else. This is so that you can actually see the bit itself chewing into the wood, and it's only for the video. Normally, everything would be on here, so that'd be safer. But you can see it's already taken with the router. We've gone in and we've done a piece of aluminum. It's put a nice little round over on. It's taken that nice rough edge off. I've done this a few times. We can use this in landing gears, nose wheels. Any piece of extruded will work very nicely using a router and any of the sand equipment. This will require a little bit of fine sanding, and it'll be a very nice round over. Okay, as you can see, we've already taken the belt unit off. It's back here in its little storage area back here. And we've changed over to the drum sander. This is, once again, it's an oscillating drum sander. Goes up and down as well as spins around. This is a fancy tool for woodworking. It's a pretty good tool in the woodworking industry. Do you need something like this? It's handy for your forms. You don't need an oscillating drum. A simple drum on a drill press will do the exact same job. And you can even go with a woodworking rasp, and the rasp itself, you can get into the side of the edge of the form. So on here, if you had a little rasp, you could just take the little rasp and just go lightly outward and get where you want. And on the bigger ones, you just take a little more into there. This is just an easier method of doing things. And if you're going to scratch build, one of the things about scratch building is having the tools, and there's nothing better than a lot of tools. Okay, so now we've moved on. We've routed the edge, and that's all done. Once again, we're not chamfering this back any, so because of the 92 degrees we need on the rib itself. If I was chamfering it back, then I would take my marker and I would mark right where that round over is, so that I knew I could sand up just to that edge. And you can just barely see the edge right there. But right now we're going to put in our reliefs for the metal, and I've already marked them out. And I've angled the table down to... The table's angled at 15 degrees, and I've got the 3/4 inch drum sander in there. So all I do is I come up to the drum sander ever so lightly. I stay on that mark that I have made to where I want the relief. And you're going to come up to almost the edge of the round over, not quite there. So if you look here closely, you will see we're right up to the edge, and we've left a little bit of space there. So I'd say we have about 3 millimeters from the edge of there to the top of the relief. Okay, so we'll move on now, and we'll do the rest along here. Oh, maybe time to stop shortly. I hear coffee. I wonder if that's Mr. Sock that brought out the coffee pot. Okay, so in a relatively short time, we brought them all. I normally double check a few times, see which one's after back. I can go back and catch this one a touch more. And that side looks good. Sometimes if you have a longer or more of a bend, then you'll probably have to increase the depth of this. And you may want to take your tabletop to a 20-degree angle or 25-degree angle just to catch a little more depth in here. I don't need that type of depth for this nice light. And there we go. We have our coffee from Mr. Puppet. Thank you, Mr. Puppet.
You're welcome.
Gotta like the puppet.
That's very cool, John. Big boys and their toys, huh? All right, so when you take a look here, you can see that we've got all of our form blocks are made and they're all ready to go. And we're ready to start marking out the aluminum, and then we will cut the aluminum and then start doing some forming. Now, one of the things I just wanted to mention is we're going to be a little creative here, and we only made one form block of these two larger ribs. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to be a bit creative. We're going to use the edge of the table as our other form block. We're going to clamp that down, and then we'll be able to use that for the other side of the form block. Because we're only bending one of these things, and we're only bending one way, we didn't need to make a sandwich. When you're doing ribs that you have to make left and right, it's always crucial. You have to have that sandwich. But if you're only making one, it always is possible to use something else, like the edge of a table. All right. One of the things we have to discuss quickly is the handling of the 16 thou or the 25 thou, or sometimes even 25. When you're handling a whole sheet, you have to handle it very, very, very carefully. And it's generally better if you have two people. Because what happens is, if you bend this, this very light sheet in two directions at the same time, you get what they call a smiley. Now, if you take a look down here at this sheet, right here, in this area, you will see a classic smiley. I'm just going to tilt the angle of that up a bit. You can see that. You can see why they call it a smile, too. It has that really nice curve right there. And they're very hard to get out. You can kind of get them out a little bit with a spoon. Sometimes people try using dry ice and trying to pop it out, but it's a very difficult thing, and you're just best off to try and avoid getting them at all in the first place. So handle the 16 thou very, very carefully, and if you can do it with two people, so much the better. What the heck's going on over the edge of the table there? Mr. Sock, are you hanging around? Oh, thank you very much. He's got a pen for me. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Sock. We'll mark the smiley here and highlight that smile. And if you put a couple of eyes on there, everybody will know exactly what it is. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to mark out the rib on the material. I've already got a 20 millimeter flange here marked out. So if I simply take my rib block and set it on there just so, I can go ahead and hold this down carefully and mark out my rib. So that's what my rib is going to look like. And if you take a look on the drawing here, it shows that I've got some really wide flanges I have to put on the one end and a narrow flange on the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure that out and put a mark down here for what my flange is going to be. It's got to be 48. So I've got 20 on the center, or 15. I can simply center that, and I can mark out 24 on each side of that. 4. That's very good. And on the other end, I have to be out 93 from the edge of the form block. So when I go out here, I want to go out 93 millimeters from the edge of the form block. That takes me to right there. And on this one, it takes me to right about there. So when you take a look at the drawings here, we're going to have an angle on here that we're going to worry about later. For the moment, I just really want to make sure that I get this angle right, and I'm going to go to 93 millimeters there. Okay. The drawings call for a 60-degree angle for this flange from the form block. So if I set my protractor to 60 degrees, I can simply set it on here so that it lines up along this edge and draw out a line along this, and that'll give me my 60 degrees. And I should be able to do the exact same opposite on this side, but I have to set it up. Okay. Actually, I think I went to the wrong spot here. I'll do that one again. That line doesn't quite intersect, so I'm going to go right out and do it. So, this is the spot, and that one. Take my straight edge, mark that off, and that's my part. Now I'm going to cut it.
Okay, so we've come to a point where we're actually going to cut some aluminum for a change. And in that, there's a varied amount of things you can use in order to cut the aluminum. The most popular thing are these Weiss aviation snips. These can be gotten at any local Home Depot, Rennie Marts, or in the States, Harbor Freight, or most builder supply stores. These are straight aviation snips. They have a serrated edge on them, and if you notice when you do cut the aluminum, they do actually leave a serration on your aluminum. You're never allowed to use the last little bit, because every time you use the last little bit, it's going to leave a really large wrinkle there. So for 3 of these, there's a left, a right, and a center, and roughly about $15 to $19, and they're absolutely crap. You don't want them. What you want are a set of offset shears that have very little serration on or no serration. The serration is used for galvanized metal or just other types of metal in which it grips the metal and pulls the metal. You don't want that with the aircraft aluminum. You want a nice set of offset. They come in, they do a nice straight cut, and once again, you shouldn't be going to the end with them. A little more care, and then we'll do a smooth cut. In a straight cut, they do a fairly nice cut, nice little edge on them, and of course you can make the turns with them depending on which one you're using. The right and the left, and both of these will do straight. For a straight cut, get yourself a nice pair of straight shears. Once again, when you're first learning how to use it, put a little mark on the end here. Could you pass me that, please? Just with your marker, just put a little mark on the end, just for the first little while, so that you know that you're not allowed to cut with the shears up to that point. So that will just remind you, as you're cutting, that you make a nice, even flow. And of course, on a long cut, this is really nice. When you're marking out something like a rib, and you're using a set of shears, always bring the material in to about 5 millimeters to the edge of where you really want to cut, because all this here is just going to create wave. So cut it off first to 5 millimeters, and then do the final cut right on the blue line. And these will work well, but there is a better method, and it's taken us a little bit of time. Dave came up with this a little while ago. He discovered this, and you'll see it shortly. It is the best method we've found for cutting anything straight. We've done 12-foot cuts with it. We've done up to 40 thou without a problem, and Dave will show you now.
This one here is called the Olfa P-Cutter 800, and I don't think any other Olfa knife will work. I don't think any other knife that I've seen will work, and I've seen people try things that they think should do the job, but it doesn't seem to work. This thing here is a scoring edge, and if you take a look at that, that is a very, very sharp edge, and you score with this. We'll use a straight edge to do our score, and once you've scored something 3 or 4 times, depending on the thickness, you want to go about halfway through the material, then you're able to simply bring that material to the edge of the table, fold it over the table, and simply break the part off. Let me just show you how this works. One of the things I always do, because it is possible to miss and go astray, is to protect your work that you are keeping with your straight edge. So rather than put it here and cut on this side, and if I slip, I make a mess of my part, I'm going to put my straight edge here. If I miss and slide off my cut, I'm not going to hurt my part. You start at the one end, press down, and pull smoothly all the way to the other end of the part. We're going to do that 3 or 4 times. Because this is 25 thou, it takes a little bit more to get all the way through. You can see these little curlicues coming off. If you can get in close enough, you can see that that's the material it's removing from this cut. I can actually, after I've got it started, I can remove that straight edge and simply score along there. It'll stay in the groove if you're very careful, but be gentle and firm. One more should do it. Mark will do that in about 3 cuts, but he's pushing a lot harder than I am. Okay, now I'm going to lay this along a nice straight edge, like the edge of my table, and put my cut right over top the corner. And simply hold that, and I can start to fold this down, and this is going to go down and break very smooth. It's nicely shaped like this right now. Beautiful straight cut. When you do this with a sheet of 25 thou, you can do a whole wing right along the table. You can do a whole sheet 12 feet long, bend it over your table. Use 2 people because when it snaps off, it comes off nice and fast and clean. And that's all there is to it. This is very sharp at this stage of the game, so you have to deburr that. Otherwise, you could slice yourself. Don't ask me how I know about that. We're just going to do some other cuts here. And then once it's done, we will have a part that's called a parts blank. It's a part blank until after you bend it. And after you bend it, it becomes a part. So once again, the straight edge is protecting the material so I can't slip and make a mess of my material. Remove that. One more. Put that on the edge of the table. Bend it. Snap it off. And those are done. So you're seeing that when you do a cut like this, there's no way that you're going to get the same little tiny ripples and whatnot along the edge of the skin that you're going to get if you're using shears. Also, you don't have to go within 5 millimeters of it and remove it. One of the other things that's very cool in terms of saving material is, if I had another rib, and I was making several of them, I could lay out my rib so that I used a common edge. And this one cut would be the edge of this part and the edge of this part, and I don't have this whole bunch of messy material in between that I've had to waste and lose. We'll do this short edge here. When you do a small piece like this, Mark, do you have the flanging tool? Because what I'd like to do is just snap that off with a pair of pliers, the short ones. Meantime, what I'll do is I'll cut these off. There we go. These are a simple sheet metal flanging that they generally use when they're doing all kinds of duct work and heating ducts and stuff like that. If you're going to use it on an airplane for working on any of your flanges, you may want to just kind of grind off these edges a little bit so they're not too sharp, because they will be sharp. They will leave a mark on your parts. Pardon me? Yeah, and you do have to flatten them. One of the ways I found to flatten these is if you put a little rod that goes down through here about halfway through, and then put it inside your vise, and actually squeeze this part with your vise, it will flatten these out, because these are not flat when you buy them. Now that's going to allow me to simply bend that part and snap it right off very easily. Actually, a regular pair of pliers probably would work on that. It's not a very big piece. These Olfa knives allow us to do all kinds of very interesting cuts. And we cut slots in the material where you will drill a hole on one end and drill a hole on the other end, and then simply make some tangent lines with this and remove it. I just want to do a quick demonstration. I talked about using the Olfa knife to cut common edges between parts. Well, here I've got a very, very small piece of material. I've laid out 3 different... What? Don't nag me. I'm doing my job here. I've laid out 3 different, my ribs 1, 2, and 3 that are out of the 16th thou. I'm using a common edge, and I've already cut through there with my slice, with my Olfa P800. Now watch, I'm able to just go ahead and set this on here. That one's separated off now. And this one here, separated off as well. And it just allows you to do a very, very nice job on making these ribs. There we go. So now all I have to do is just trim the ends and put in some relief holes here and here and here. And I will have some parts blanks ready to go, and we'll bend some up right away. This is a homemade edge marking tool that we put together. It's simply a piece of 1/2-inch copper tubing and some UMPHW humpy stuff plastic. What do they call this? Ultra high molecular weight plastic. That's the stuff. I can remember that, but I can't remember the acronym. Anyway, so I drilled a hole through that, put my piece of copper tubing through there. My copper tubing has a piece of, or a hole drilled through that, and a little hole in the side for me to put a set screw. And I can simply sink my pen in here to allow me to make a mark. And then I take my rule and I can check and see what my edge distance is going to be. In this case, it's 18 millimeters, which is really good. That's what I'm looking for. So I can simply set my edge here so it's 18 millimeters here and 18 millimeters here, and that way I don't have to cut this edge. Hold it down and then simply run my pen around it very, very carefully. Now this is going to change on this end because that's not what they actually use, but for here, it's giving me a nice edge distance. Commercial units like this, from what I understand from my friend John Croak, run around $20. And with a little bit of ingenuity, you can make something on your own that's a lot cheaper and does the same job. So we're pretty much set for that one. We just have to mark it out. The holes. Okay, the other thing we want to do when we're doing this is we'll probably sink that down to the holes. I'll also drop the rib on here so that when I'm centering this, I can make sure that that rib is going to be centered on that piece of plastic. To do the holes. Alright, so while we have this here, we're going to go ahead and put our tooling hole in that'll allow us to screw this to the bottom half of the form block. Now you'll notice that I drilled right into the table, and you're going to make holes in your table. It's a work table, it's made to be used. Don't be afraid to get some holes in it. So now I have my blank here ready to be cut out. I've got my tooling holes in there that allow me to set it up properly on the block, and we're ready to cut that out. Alright, for the next form block, what we're going to do here is we're going to actually fix this one right down so it can't move at all.
That'd be a good one for bloopers.
I don't know if I want to be, all the bloopers will be me and you won't have any bloopers. Alright, now we're drilled right to the table, so this is not going to move while I'm going ahead to mark my flanges, which is a good thing. tighten that in.
What are you going to do with the $20 you saved by building that?
I'm going to buy my friend John a bottle of rum.
Wow. You got me hooked on that vanilla stuff.
Well, the vanilla stuff is good, but the screech is very special. Now I'm going to go ahead and take that off of there. Well, I might as well mark the edge first with my blue marker right here. So this one already has the tooling holes in it because I drilled it to the table. There we go. And you can see that I'm working on a discarded part. When you've made a mess of one part, something happened and it just went south on you, you can go ahead and make other parts on it, as long as they're, of course, smaller parts. Let's just remove this and then we'll fix that tip and then we'll get Mark to cut these for us.
Okay, so on this now we have a couple of curved pieces. And in that we could go at it with once again, the straight shears, and that would probably do a pretty decent job. There is a faster way. We could have Wolfen knifed this, but there is a faster way. And what I tend to use is this. It's just a simple little air shear. It does sacrifice a small amount in its cut, but taken slow, handled properly, and when you do it, you control it with your fingers. Try and keep one finger in between the trigger as well as on top of the trigger. So this way you can control the speed of it quite nicely. And you'll see, we'll just cut these right out, lickety split, and we'll be good.
Relief holes, Mark?
Perfect. Once you're used to a tool like this, it is a bit faster to work with. It's a nice little tool. When you're doing very large ribs, like the main ribs for the wings, then it becomes an exceptionally handy tool because you've got those nice long sweeping curves and will do a wonderful job with them. Takes a bit of practice, but once again, it's an excellent tool to use. Okay, let's take a quick little break here and have a little talk about the aluminum. The aluminum that we're using in our types of aircraft that we produce is 6061 T6. Now, it's made up of several different materials within it. One of the main materials in it is silicone, as opposed to 2024, which has a copper within it. If you scratch 2024 or in any way buff it, the one thing you have to do is remove that as soon as possible and then treat the material. 6061 is not as prevalent to corrosion through scratches or through any type of buffing or that. In that, it allows us to do a lot of things in the deburring area that you couldn't do on some other types of aircraft material. We have, what we do is we use normally a little file. This is called a Vixen file. Now this little Vixen file, it's a body file, essentially for the automotive industry. And it's been thrown in a vise, snapped off, it's been trimmed up and cleaned up. So that all we're left with is just the little ridges of the file itself. And what we do with this is we'll use this to knock off the top edges of the holes that we've drilled. So what I can do is just show you quickly down here is we do have the 2 holes that we've used right here. So we've drilled these 2 holes here, this one here and this one here, and once again over here as well. And there's a pretty nasty burr, especially on this one. This one pushed. Someone here put a screw through without trying to do a pilot hole first. We'll talk to him later.
It's the sock.
It's the sock. So this is just a simple little file, just a nice light over the top, and that takes the whole top edge off. Now, if we get a really close on this, if we can get really close on this hole here, and I mean really close, how close can we get this? If you look, the top edge of this hole has the shininess just around the whole top edge of it, and there you can see it a little bit better. Now, there is a little bit of a buffing here, and that's all that is. It's a buffing. 6061, if you can't get your fingernail onto it, it's not a scratch. It's just a buff. And this is acceptable. In a paint job, you won't even see this. And that's what you're after here. So you've buffed just the top ridge of the hole that you would drill, and that's fully acceptable for deburring. It's done very quickly with the file, and in that, you save a lot of time. So we'll continue with that. We'll just do the other side as well. And once again, this one's going to take a little more work. I may have to take a coffee break to finish them. There. We use the shear to cut this, and even with the Olfa knife, it leaves a fairly sharp edge. This is dangerous. We want to clean this up. You can cut yourself, and you just want to clean the edge up. There's several different products you can use. You could use just a simple little file, a long file, and you can go this way and get the whole edge. Certain files you can go 2 ways. This particular file prefers to go just one. That's one way of doing it. And in using a very long file, if you have dips in there, you can clean them out quite nicely. This piece is in pretty good shape. So we have this is a product from 3M. It's a mixture of emery cloth as well as the like a Scotch-Brite pads. That's the brand name for them. And in this, it's an excellent deburring tool, excellent edge tool. What I tend to do though is I tend to push a couple pieces in that I've destroyed just to get some grooves in here, and I use this a lot for doing pieces because now if I spin this up full size I can actually see the ridges on here, and you can see them on TV as well. And I just put a piece in, I bring this through, and I've completely smoothed out the whole side all in one shot. This side's done, this side's done. You can see how it's done a very nice job. And the edge is done, all in one shot. So I wouldn't do that before in this piece. So it doesn't take a whole lot of time to work with this. Spend a little more time at the top getting the shape I want. And you can actually zip these through pretty quick. So there we see the whole piece is deburred. It's nice, it's smooth. It's not going to catch my fingers. We're great with that one. There are some other products on the market. These are, once again, flapper wheels. That's what they're called. Here's a new one. This one here, I try to keep a new one so that if I need to do a flat surface, I still have a flat piece. But typically over time, they get the little edge into them so that I can throw a piece in there. And this I use a lot if I have a very rough edge and I need to get it smooth. I will just quickly throw these in the chuck and put the piece in there, and away it goes. So let me finish off this, and then we'll be getting ready for the bending.
All right, I'm going to start with rib number 2. And I wanted to do these ones because I want to demonstrate how to do it not using the other part of the form block, or using the table as the other part of the form block, which you may be able to do if you were only having to bend one of each part. So what I want to do is I want to actually, here's the edge of the table here, I want to bring my part slightly past the edge of it so that when I'm pounding on this edge, that I can make sure I actually can reach this edge really well. So I'm going to bring my line that I have from my edge of my part just past the edge of the table, like that. And then I'm going to bring my form block over there so it lines up on the line. And it's just past the edge of the table as well. And then I'm going to clamp it in place. Okay. Now, depending on what you're using for a table, it may make a difference to how you clamp this. But this one's going to work fairly easily just to go ahead and put it right here. And I'm using a wood clamp style. Okay, that one's fairly tight. And this one here I can reach, because it's a little thinner here, I can go ahead and just put a C-clamp on this one. So I'm going to just clamp that down. This isn't very strong material, so you have to be really, really careful not to crush it. Actually, I can see it slipping off already. I have to make sure that my clamps don't go over onto the flange, because if my clamps are over the flange, then my material is going to run into it and it's going to deform it. Okay, here's my hammer of choice. Mark likes a softer hammer and then a harder hammer, but I found that for me, I formed most of the parts that I've ever used with this dead blow hammer. And this is a 1.5 pound dead blow. You can hear it. We can use it in the band. That's good, eh? You just need to hear the other drums and the marimba come in. Anyways, we're going to start by bringing this up gently and slowly all along the edge. And it's going to start to bend up. You can see it's starting to bend now. And you go back and forth, working the material as you go. Yeah, now we're starting to really get there. Okay, you can start to see that it's forming a fairly nice straight line. What we'll do when we're finished is we'll probably take this thing out and we can set it on the table and we can pound down on the other side. For now, I would say this edge is good enough. I'm going to disassemble this, turn it around, and do the other edge, and then I'll set it on the table and we'll finish it up. All right, well, I got in a little bit of trouble for doing this on the table that Mark's television and VCR was on, so we've switched tables over to this one, and we're going to do the other flange now. And it's the same process. We're going to bend up from one end to the other and all the way back several times along there. That's moved up slightly, so I have to just take that off and just let it go back because I can't actually get it if I don't have the edge. Okay, let's try that some more. All right, now I can hold this piece very carefully. I can go along and just finish the edge that way. If you take a look, you can see that I've got an outward bend on each side. Now we're supposed to have 2 degrees. This will be something that we can adjust a tiny bit. This is very light material. But in the end, there's a rib, nice and straight. It has a very nice curve right here. The radius of curvature is the 1/8. So I think that's going to be a good part. We just have to bend this edge. That's what happens when you can use stuff that's previously done and scrapped. It was actually taken from another large part of skin that we already had chromated, so this one here is ready to go. I'll just do this end yet, and I'll do the same process by simply fixing this down to the bench. You can see the line right there where the bend is going to be. And there we have a part. Now this is has a bit of an outward angle on here, and it's supposed to actually according to the plans, so we're all right with that. One of the things we see is that we did drill a lightning hole here. I'm sorry, not our lightning hole, but a relief hole. We did drill a relief hole here. One of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to actually take a file and file those out a little bit. They're a little bit tight for my liking. So, and you see the parts are actually coming together right there in the corner. So we'll just file that out so you have a little bit more of a relief, and then that will be a part that we'll go ahead and use. All right, so I have, when I folded this up here, and I had a relief hole that was a little bit small, and it seems a little bit crowded to me, and so I want to be able to give it a little bit more space. At this stage of the game, the idea of putting a drill to that doesn't make much sense. But this one here is one that I've already done, and I'll just show you what I did to tune that up. Okay, I just used a file. This is a half round. I'm just going to run it along that corner there. Hold your part nice and firm. Just run the file right along the corner, and you're going to remove some material. And once I have a little bit removed, I will take my standard deburring tool here, and I'll just run it around inside that hole. I want to make sure you got no sharp edges. And I've still got some parts that if these come together, those might touch a tiny bit. So I'll grab some shears, and I'll just trim those up a tiny bit.
Oh! Would you watch it next time?
And now I have some relief holes that look like they're not going to give me any problem at all. The burrs are all gone, and I'm not going to cut myself, and I'm not going to have any little parts falling off and getting in between skins and causing irritation. Thanks.
All right, so what we're going to do here is instead of using the form block to do the complete rudder rib here, we're going to just form one side of it using the small brake, and then we'll do the other side using the form block that we have. So in that, won't take long to set this up. This is a bed brake, apron brake. Lock her up, and we'll put a 90-degree bend in that. Actually, it should be 92, is it not? 92. So 92. So we're just shy of the 90 on that bend up, and that comes out, and we're just dead perfect right on the line. We have a nice deflection on it. Looks good. And then we'll do the other side, most likely. So we'll lock that into place now. We're right on the line. And we'll come up. The only issue we have is the small, and we're going to have a little clearance issue, but you know, we can get close. We can get close on that. So that's pretty good. And we'll just finish that off. We'll bring that over with the form block to finish that off. While we're at it, we can do these little ones here. Once again, you can do either way. If you don't have a little brake handy at the moment, then you can use the little form blocks here, and that should help you along. I've done quite a few rudders with the form blocks, but we'll just break these and get them bent over. Just a way of saving a fair amount of time. And plans for this break will be readily available. Back up. There we go. We're pretty close on this one. We'll just come back in with the form block, just finish that up a little bit. Okay, so now that we've done this, we've made the rib without using the form block this time. We've just done it straight with the brake. We've got a beautiful rib, nice edges, and this is gonna be perfect. We'll put it into the form block and just bend up this little last tab. That should take care of that. So you really don't need to have the form block in this.
Don't need the form blocks?
No, you don't need the form block, not all the time.
What are we gonna do with these things?
I'm not sure. How about a garage sale?
Okay.
Okay, so what we've gotten so far is we've gotten the rib blank within the mold, within the form. We've already screwed it together, and the screws don't protrude through the other side, so you can actually attach the vise quite nicely. But we do see one issue. At the tip here, we have a little too much. We only want about 3 millimeters. There is no real structure within this. This is only a guide for the skin to go around. You're not riveting into this. It has to be a very smooth thing so that when you pull the skin around tightly around this edge, if there's any wrinkles or any irregularities within this, it's going to leave a dent within the skin itself. So we're going to take this down just a little bit, shape it a little more towards the form. Probably give myself 2 or 3 millimeters here, and then from then on we can just go and finish the rest of it. Now, because it's already in here, and there is a method that I do use for shaping aluminum, shaping wings and all that sort of stuff. I use this. It's a grinder. Your typical angle grinder, used for steel and everything else. It'll cut through a weld in no time. It'll grind through a 1/4-inch plate, no problem. The difference is we're using it for aluminum. There's a wheel out. These are offered by several companies, 3M as well as other lower price companies will have these as well, Harbor Freight and that sort of thing. And it's just a laminated series of emery strips. I would advise getting used to this before you actually try it on your airplane. This has the capability of actually stripping a piece of aluminum really quick, or it has the ability of very finely putting on a nice round edge or just taking off a little bit of material that you need. It's a great little tool, but once again, knowledge with this tool is imperative.
Hey, Mark. Don't forget your glasses.
Thank you, Mr. Sock. So we'll go here. The grinder, we've removed the cover shield for it just for the filming purposes. Normally there's a cover shield on here to protect your hands and your face from flying particles. Typically I would probably not have used the grinder to do this. I probably would have marked it, measured out my 3 millimeters, and have just trimmed it with a pair of snips. But in order to show you that you can actually use a grinder and you can do a very nice job in getting the shape you want on aluminum, then it was worth doing it in this situation. So now I'm going to just deburr this a little bit, and then we'll start doing the forming. Okay, so we're going to come in now. We're just going to take out that little bit of edge that was created by the grinder. It's fairly significant. One thing I will caution you is that when you do use a grinder, it does tend to throw aluminum throughout the shop. If you have a coffee sitting anywhere over where the grinder's going, you will be drinking aluminum. We will not discuss how I found that out. So that's all clean, that's nice. As you can see now, the edge is a lot closer than what it was. As I said, we are not looking for any strength out of this. All we're looking for is form and shape. A little bit on the edge here is going to give us more than enough of what we need. We should be able to apply it over quite nicely, and it should look very nice when we get there. Now I need to change this around because it's in here backwards. I like to hammer towards myself, not away. I find it easier. I use a barrel vise. I use it a lot. For certain reasons, I can twirl my barrel vise around and work on different areas as I need to. This is probably the second one I've had in this spot. The first one was broken by another one of my tools that did the nose gears, the nose gear legs. So basically, you start from front to the back. Usually you can do it in 3 pulls just with the rubber hammer. I use a very soft rubber hammer at first. I also have a couple of other hammers I'm quite partial to. Unlike Dave, everybody has their own desire and their own way of doing things. There's some people who use a maple slapper. Some people will use a leather bar that will be there to form the metal down. I'm not crazy about either of those. The wood slapper is great for body work in the automotive industry, not so much for in the aircraft. Lead, it introduces a foreign material into the aluminum. Once again, it's not one of my preferences. So I start off with a very, very soft rubber. This one's been around for a while. It's very soft. I can actually move it with my finger. So to me, that's a great start. And I'll start right up near the top, and I want to bring it over.
It's actually okay.
Okay. Remember to work the nose carefully, just to get it going. I'll move the vise around so you can have a peek. Okay, so now we've got the aluminum started, but you see it's already waving. It's already starting to not want to form properly. So at this point in time, we have to start getting it to train to go into our little guides here that we've already made with the when we did the form. We're going to actually start putting in our creases so that we know where the reliefs are. And we're just going to put a little bit here. Now, as you can see, as I pull on these, you can see things starting to straighten up just by me putting a little bit of an indent in here. Just training it a little bit. And that's a good start. So instead of that big waves that we were having, we've now got a fairly uniform coming over. The tool itself, if I take a second here, the tool itself, I've manufactured this one myself, and they're fairly easy to make. It's just 3 pieces of rod. I've used a needle nose vice grip. Regular vice grips will probably provide more strength within this. You can also use just a pair of regular pliers. These are available at most aircraft tool supply stores, but they're a fair high cost. I've got 3 of them in the shop. This one I tend to use the most. It does give a fair amount, but I find it's just easier to handle, so I do like this one. And the 3 pieces, as you can see, the metal comes in, you put it in the metal, and it just closes down and makes the form. And we'll be using this a lot later to do a lot of the truing up after we've pulled the rib out of the block. So we've got it already into a position where we want it. It's starting to go, right? So we'll just bring it along a little bit more. And you see how much nicer that's already starting to sit in. But now we still have a little bit of a spot here, and we want to pull it into these a little bit more. All right, so what we need to do is we need to bring this down a bit. You can use almost any material in which to do this. There's guys that use a large screwdriver that has a fairly wide throat within it. I have these little wee hammers, and I find the wood here is about the appropriate size of what I like, and it just seems to work well for me. So I just put them in, I set them right into there. I just give them a little extra whack. It forms nicely, pulls everything into the groove, and come back. And don't be afraid, guys, to give this a bit of a whack. It's not going to go anywhere. And you see how now we have it nice and flat. It looks gorgeous almost. We still have to work the front. We haven't gotten there yet, but we've gotten this really happy. I can go either, I'll be using this later when I have to do a little bit more of the nose work. But right now, just come in with a rawhide. This is a rawhide hammer. They're a little bit rare to get. If you do find one, grab it, hold on to it. They're a godsend in doing that. So all I'm doing here is I'm trying to bring a little more definition to the bend over that we've done. And that's all I'm trying to do with this now. It's just a little definition. And that's it, that's all it took. So that looks gorgeous there on that side. So now we can bring the vise around, and I'm gonna work the top now for a little bit. Okay, we see we have a lift out here and a lift out here. I need to work these. I need to bring these away. I need to move the material away from the nose and bring it down into here. So I probably I don't think I can pull any more with the rubber. I'm just gonna give it a little more shot here. No, that's about all I can do with the rubber. And I think I'm gonna just throw on a clamp right now just to bring a little more strength there. I don't want to stress the form too much, and I am gonna put a fair amount of work into this little tip here. So a little clamp will just make life a whole lot easier for us. And don't be afraid, guys, to use clamps. We can use them here, one on either end. You can use them in a very long, when you're doing a wing rib, you're gonna wanna actually have quite a few along. And as you're bringing the skin over, you can actually just grab it, rotate it around, and that'll work just fine for you. So anyways, we're gonna, yeah, I'm okay. I missed my foot, luckily. I don't even know where that came from. No. So now let's work this back a bit. I'm going to come in. This is just a maple. It's a maple hammer. I made it myself. If you can find a little something like this, a maple, it works wonderfully. It's nice and soft. As you can see, I still have a little bit here. And I'm going to work that around. You're going to see this. Just go slow. Take your time, guys. What you're trying to do here is you're trying to move the material around. As a rule, the material doesn't like to go anywhere, but it's imperative that this be as smooth as you can get it, because this is pressing against the leading edge of your rudder or the leading edge of your wing if you're doing the nose ribs. And the steps are all the same throughout the whole thing. Work it down, work it down. That's all you're doing here. This side is working really well now. It's coming down nicely. And I'm not putting a lot on this, okay? As you can see, I'm just holding it up near the top. I'm holding it up near the top. I'm not putting a lot of force on this, just a little bit, and just to bring it around. And that's all it is. Just little steps all the way around. Okay, and then I can come in here and just do a little bit more on the side here because we moved some down. And that is, I run my finger across there, that's as smooth as can be. It's formed over really nice. This material, this type of a form material, the MDF, does absorb some of the backside. You will indent it a little bit if you put a little too much pressure on here. It's not a bad thing. If you're doing just one or two, it's a great material for doing this. But if you're doing a lot, then this is not desirable. But for the one-off, it's perfect for that. So we'll remove this out of the vise now. We'll just flip this over. Locate it in this way. As I said, you can rotate these around, get them out of your way. We're done with the other side pretty much. And we're going to work this now. And you think I would have followed my own advice and faced it towards me. It's a personal preference. I prefer to pull the metal towards me. And when you get used to that, if you follow that rule all the time, you tend not to make two ribs of the same type. If I have to make two ribs, what I'll do is I will make the one rib, and I will mark on this side finished. Right on the face here, I take a magic marker, a Sharpie, and just mark finished on here, so that when I go and put my new blank in, get it back in the jig, I can look and go, oh, I've already done that side, turn it around, go do the other side. Just saves a bit of a hassle. Everybody makes two ribs of the same type at one point in time or another. So same thing, we're just gonna get it going, get her started. Little bit of pressure on these now just to get them to fall into where I want them. It's just a pre-start for them. You don't need a whole lot here. And also when you're working with these, don't go near the edge. If you go near the edge, you're going to get a crease. So just work it back a bit. Stay back from the edge quite a bit from the center, and that'll work just fine. And we'll come back with the rubber hammer again. Guys, don't be afraid to wail on it. You can actually go like this through the whole thing. If you're having a bad day at work, great way to take out your frustration. Just give it to her. And it forms down nicely. Once again, this one's formed down fairly nice. We'll just a little bit more into the form. And we'll just give it a little extra pressure in here. Okay. And this one I really don't think needs much, but we'll just give it a bit. One thing to also be cautious of, the flange of the rib you're making does not exceed the width of the form. So the edge stops at the same spot that the blank does, or it stops short of the form. If you have a larger material over the form, a couple things happen. As you're starting to form, you're going to get a bend over here. Not the end of the world, but it's an absolutely useless material that you're only adding weight to your plane. And as we all know, weight in a plane is very, very noticeable when you do your final balance. Okay, so this is looking good. I'm going to come back, just give it a little bit on here just to get my shape. And this is looking good. And as you can see, we didn't angle this down. We didn't chamfer this any. So you can see already it's a 90 degree. The spring back is already in there. You can actually see it really close between these two. So that's about 2 degrees. And since this block's supposed to be 92, we're happy. And once again, I can just put a little bit more into here. And I'm going to come back up here and I'm going to work on this. We have a little bit of material. We have to move this back. We have to spread this around. And we don't have to go with the rubber hammer now. We can just move on. Careful how you work this. It's going to want to go both ways. And we're just going to work it down. Just work it down. As you're hammering as well, you're trying to work it down, but also try and pull it out at the same time. So a little bit of pulling out. Work it all the way around. Just keep it going. Pull the hammer towards the way you want the aluminum to go. It will follow. This is 6061. It's not the most pliable of aluminums, but it does form very nicely. Where are you going to get into trouble? When you're making these ribs, you're going to get into a lot of trouble up in this area. If you leave too much material within here, as you saw, we had the little outcrops here. When you go to start hammering them, if you have too much material, they'll work to either side, and you won't be able to spread it out. And what will happen is you'll just end up with cracks. So be careful of that. Going a little bit less here, it just produces a very nice front. And this one's just about perfect. I'm just going to go a little bit more. I feel a little spot here. Work it back a little bit. I think I'm going to take up just a little bit into here. That's good. We'll work this back. And that's good. So the only thing I have left now is the bottom one. And we have this piece here. A couple ways. You can take the rubber hammer, just whack it over. You can just, pull it that way. We've done it this way throughout the whole thing. We'll just continue on. And of course, come in and grab the edge. Okay, so now we can take off our extra little hands here, the little clamps that we had. We'll pull it out. And we'll pull the screws out of this now. This can sometimes get to be a bit of a trick because it's sunk into those holes, into the reliefs. But it comes out. And there's the rib. It's a gorgeous rib. We have got beautiful sides on here. We have pretty close to a 92 on some of these edges, most of these edges. We're going to just hand seam this just a touch, just to bring it into line. And that looks good. The only thing left to do with these now, and David's about to hand me, here's the one from the factory. This is the rib you buy from the factory. It's all the work you put into it, all the forms, the metal, everything else. It's done for you, and that to some degree is attractive. To have all that work put into it already finished, that's great. So here we go. We have the same form, same thing. And if you look, they are almost identical. They really are nice. This one here has got tight corners still, so I'm still gonna clean them out a bit, open them up a little bit. But our sizing's good. They look similar. We're quite happy with this setup. The one thing we have left to do is to true it. Truing a rib, you find the flattest surface you can. And if you look here, you're going to see there's a little bit of a height in this area here. So I'm just going to come on with my fluting pliers again. I'm just going to add a bit. See how that's pulled down nicely? Add a bit back here. There we go. And a little bit there. That's pulled it down pretty good. That looks good. Okay, up in here, see the gap up in here? We're just going to pull that down. Watch. See how it came down? There we go again. There. Where's it still a little bit high? Okay, I'm a little bit high here. Just a little bit on this. A little bit on this one. Okay, we're still a little bit high within these two. So we'll come in here just a touch now. And you have to do this with all your rib, guys. And that's it. Perfectly flat now. We've got a flat, gorgeous rib ready for the nose of the 701. Of all the ribs you're going to make in the plane, of everything, all the pieces in here, there are the pieces that are inherently ugly to do. This is the one of them. The other piece you saw me form not long ago was usually quite a piece to do, but this one here tends to be just about the worst form I've ever made in any plane. And they're all the same. All the planes are the same. The top of the rudder, because it's such a thin piece, there's so little material here that it just becomes a challenge well above the others. So when you actually, that's why we're showing you the rudder on this video, is the fact that there tends to be more challenges within this because of the smaller pieces. If you're doing just a whole wing rib, you've got such a large radius to play with. It's actually fairly easy. It's easier to do than one of these. So this is a challenge. I'm going to actually take a little bit more material out here. Once again, we've cut this a little too thick. We're going to bring this down just a bit, and I'm going to maybe take a little bit more out of just this couple of areas. These, once again, are a little too thick as well. That looks a little better. We're going to be able to form that a whole lot easier. And I'll need to deburr that now. There's the deburring tool. Okay, so that feels a whole lot better. This one's a little bit different. We don't have any reliefs in here. We're probably going to add two later on after we pull it out of the form. We're probably going to add one about here and one down here. And this is to take up some of the slack that we're gonna move over, some of the extra material we're gonna move over on that. But other than that, it's pretty basic, a straight form. Make sure you pull it the right way. This one is faced the right way. What I'm finding right now is, as I get near the end, I really don't have a whole lot of support. It's very thin at this end here. And you can see there's just no support happening. Days of Ice works better for this one. Alright, so. Okay, we're going to work it back a bit. Revise it again. Work it back. Now, boy, we've got a big job ahead of us here. This is going to be a big job. I need to work this material, bring this over, and this is a lot of material to fold down now. And it's going to take a little extra work on our part. We got to be careful. We in no way crease this. And as you can see, we're already starting with a crease right where I said we'd be needing to put something. So just before anything happens, it's time to just throw out a little dimple in there. Get that started. And that's going to require some work after it comes out of the form. There's going to be another one there too.
Man, I can't see a thing over here.
I'm doing the best I can. I do apologize. This is, right now, the way it's sitting here, this is just a nasty little situation. This will affect, and you will see that in the skin for sure, but there's not a lot we can do. We know we need to put a dent in here and a relief in here. In both spots we need to have reliefs. We're not going to work this any further at this point in time. We're going to work this once we get it out of the form. But for now we're going to work this and work this the best we can, the smoothest we can. Be careful not to work in this area. If you hit this now, with the amount that's, it won't take long before that just folds in upon itself and creates a line. It cracks. Once that cracks, you're doing another piece. I'll come in here and I'm going to start this a little bit early over here. Okay. Okay, I've got the tip nice and smooth now. But I still have these two spots I do have to take up the material in. If it was to make this form again, I would definitely have put a couple of reliefs within the form so that we could have taken the material into the reliefs. It would have made it a lot easier. But on another thought, I would have done that. Okay, so I've got a couple here. I do have to take them out. So we'll get in here with the pliers and we'll work them. We'll work them in so that we can get them recessed. Get it recessed. And we even put a little bit on here. Okay, and we can pull off this side, pull this in, a little bit here, here, we can come in behind. Okay, we're still a little bit out on here, but we can make that shape come around nicely, I believe. This is a tool. I need to clamp a little bit closer to the handle. That's looking pretty good there. I'll put a little more of a divot into here. And that looks pretty close. Good. Now we'll just double check. And that's perfectly flat already. Good. So we're all set. Here's our tip rib. We're looking good. It's going to form nicely here. We have the nice round up in here, smooth. And this is smooth up into here. It's going to take the shape up into here and flow nicely here. Okay, so now we're into the rear spar, the main spar of the rudder, and we're going to cut that out right now. And what I've done is I've already scored one side up, and we're ready to go on the second side. So first thing I'm going to do is, because I am by myself at the moment, I don't have a second pair of hands, I'm going to place this on properly. Now, as we said before, always place it on the inside of the material you want to save. That's the piece where you want the ruler. And that's just because if you do slip while you're pulling, you won't ruin your material. So I'll put on my little helping hand here. And that's fine. Now you may find, depending on whether you're left or right-handed, that the one side's a lot easier to work with than the other. I'm right-handed, and I do find this side a little awkward to work with. So I do have to go a bit slower with it. But once you get the first 2 or 3 scores in, then you're pretty assured that's going to stay in its groove. Once again, this spar for this particular plane is 25 thou of 6061 T6. We've already talked about the properties of this aluminum. And I think one more should just about do it. I'm going to go a little higher. Yeah, this will be the final score, I believe. Okay, so we'll pop this off. Now I do need to score the top end a bit, and just to match up. And I can use the same ruler. It's a little bit thick, but that's fine. And once again, I'm going to be working backwards to where I normally am comfortable. Now, I prefer to work usually out from the material. I don't like to work too often into it. I like to start at one end and end out on the table, but that's not quite so convenient this particular time. So I'll just be a little more cautious. And what you may find, I'm going to stop a little short. I'm not going to go terribly deep with that. What you're going to find is sometimes you're into a position where, and as you can see, that's a T intersection at the top there. It's not quite so easy to get all the way through. That's not a big deal. Because what you have to do with that is you come back, and excuse me a sec while I step in front here. You have to come back, and now that you've got the score in here, you can already see the score right along this line. You can come back and your shears will actually follow that really nice. See how easy that cuts? So it's just... I'll do this section here a bit. Okay, so I've already finished shearing that. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a shear down here just so you can see a little bit more of what I did. So I'm down here and I'll just demonstrate. Now I've already sheared this and this is ready to be just bent over and snapped. Well, just in case you're into a place where you can't really bend it over, it's not easy. You can just run your shears right in the groove and you'll find that the shears will follow that groove nicely and make it really easy. There's virtually no pressure on this whatsoever. But I don't need to do that. I can actually, from this point on, just bend it up a bit. Now, I tend to shear through a little bit more, which allows me to not always have to use the edge of the table. And I can just do this. And as you can see, it's pretty much broken off. And we can do the same again. We've already sheared, we've already scored our line through here, and we can bring our spar up as well. Just a little bit at a time. Okay, it's 25 thou. We're not overly concerned with this getting a smiley into it like the 16. Just a little bit. I'll go down again, down again, down again, and I'll just work it a bit. And the top's already broken. There, that's all broken off now. There we go, and down. One more time up, and we're finished. So there's a very straight cut. Typically, it's the same type of cut you would get if you were using a large foot shear. It's absolutely perfect, and it's straight. You can do this with any size cut. We do, quite often we'll do a 12-foot cut, and it works quite well on wing skins or spars if we need to. We've done spars as well. And we've done up to 40 thou. It just takes a little extra scoring. So this works out exceptionally well. From here, I've already put the marks on it. I've laid out the marks of where I need to bend. And then I'll move on to the break. One more thing before I do that though, I like to quickly touch on the plans. Depending on which manufacturer you have and which airplane you are actually building, the Zenith aircraft in the plans, you will see when it gives the layout for certain things, it will discuss developed length. You will see here it's described as DL 157 for the bottom of the spar, DL 77 for the top of the spar. Now you draw the center line, which I've already done, and you can see on the piece itself that I have done the center line, and it's telling me on the plans that I need to have a 120 millimeter from the center line bottom. So that's what I've drawn out here. Leaves 18.5 millimeters on either side. Same goes for the top. From the top I need 40, and that's in the plans, which leaves me 18.5 on either side. The developed length is the length flat before bending, and the designer has given you that. So we know from that the developed length for the top is 77 millimeters and the bottom is 157. With that information, when we go to bend it on our brake, using these 2 marks here, then we'll end up with a spar that's the exact dimensions of what we need. Okay, we'll move on to the brake from there. Okay, we've moved over to the brake now, and we're about to bend the spar that we've just cut out. Now, I'm using a brake that was our own design. We've borrowed from other pieces, and we've come up with this design. This will be available to you as purchasing this DVD. We'll have measured drawings available for you to be able to build this brake at your own leisure. A bill of materials will be with it as well. It's a fairly cheap brake to build, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. Just the normal little hand tools you're going to need, a bit of welding, cutting, and you will need that for your airplane anyway. So we'll just, right now, I've lined up the brake. The 2 little marks I've made actually sit right on the bed of this brake. And that's all it takes with this one. I've preloaded this because I've got a long spar here. This brake is 54 inches long. Any brake you do or desire to get, if you wish to purchase one, make sure it's longer than 4 feet. As a rule, there are very few pieces that are over 4 feet in this plane, or in most Zenith design planes. But you do want the little bit extra on either side just to give you a little bit of play. So once again, we've preloaded it to accept the 25, and we're just going to put in 2 bends into it. There's the one. And we'll push it in a bit further. One of the nice things about this brake is it allows you to push in and still be able to use it. Line up is fairly quick with it. I'll tighten this down. There's a touch more in on this end. Now there will likely be a little bit of tuning involved, and we'll do that with a hand. But there it is. There's a beautiful looking spar, bent very nicely. Well, we went a little bit over here in order to make sure we got our 90 up into here, and we'll just take this out and we'll hand seam this out just a touch. And this looks pretty good here. So all in all, a very nice job with this. We'll double check the measurements, and then we'll move on and get ready for the other pieces we need.